Rain poured relentlessly over the dark city streets that night, drenching everything in its cold embrace. Amidst the flickering streetlights and rushing cars, a young woman hurried home, her thin coat clinging to her trembling body. Her name was Amara, a nurse who had just finished a grueling double shift at the hospital. Exhausted, she took a shortcut to the park, unaware that this night would change her life forever. Under the old oak tree, she noticed a shadow. A man curled up against the cold, covered in a tattered blanket. His hands trembled, his face hidden beneath the hood of a worn-out jacket. People passed by, pretending not to see him, but Amara's heart refused to turn away. She approached slowly. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked softly, kneeling beside him. The man didn't answer immediately. When he finally looked up, she froze. His eyes, deep gray with flecks of gold, held a strange sadness, a weight she couldn't name. "I'm fine," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "Just tired of everything." Amara's chest tightened. She could tell he wasn't a regular homeless man. His posture, the way he spoke, calm, polite, almost refined, it didn't fit the streets. Still, she didn't press. Instead, she handed him her umbrella and the sandwich she'd saved from lunch. "Take this," she said with a gentle smile. "At least eat something warm." He stared at her in silence for a long moment before taking it with trembling hands. "You shouldn't be kind to strangers. The world isn't kind back." "Maybe," she said, rising to her feet, "but that's why someone has to be." For days after, Amara couldn't stop thinking about him. Something in his eyes haunted her, loneliness wrapped in mystery. Every evening, she returned to park with food, and every time he was there, she learned his name, or at least the name he gave her. Eli. He spoke little about himself. He always turned conversation toward her, her dreams, her fears, her struggles. And soon, those brief meetings became the most peaceful part of her day. Weeks passed. One night, as the snow began to fall, she found Eli shivering, his lips pale. Without thinking, she took his arm. "You can't stay here anymore," she said firmly. "You'll freeze to death." He hesitated. "Amara, I can't let you." "Don't argue," she cut in. "You're coming with me." She brought him to her small apartment, barely big enough for one person. But she didn't care. She gave him warm clothes, food, and a blanket. That night, she caught him standing by the window, staring out at the city skyline with a strange look in his eyes. "What are you thinking?" she asked. He turned, a faint smile on his lips. "Just wondering if anyone up there still remembers me." She didn't understand what he meant. She just smiled sadly and said, "Well, I remember you." And something about those words seemed to break something inside him. The days turned into weeks. Eli helped around the apartment, fixed broken things, even cooked sometimes. He laughed more often now, though sometimes she'd catch him lost in thought, his gaze distant, like he was looking at a world far away. One evening, as they watched the sunset from her window, Amara realized something terrifying. She had fallen in love with him, not because of his looks or his mysterious charm, but because he was gentle, kind, and unpretentious. He listened. He cared. He made her feel seen. But one morning, she woke to find him gone. The blanket folded neatly on the couch. The small note left on the table read, "Thank you for reminding me who I am." Her heart broke. She searched for him everywhere, the park, the shelters, the alleys, but Eli had vanished. It was as if he never existed. 2 weeks later, while scrolling through the hospital waiting room TV, she froze. On the screen, a familiar face smiled during a press conference. Clean-shaven, wearing a custom suit, surrounded by reporters. After months of disappearance, tech billionaire Elijah Stone finally returns, confirming he's back as CEO of Stone Enterprises. The world spun. The man in the suit, the billionaire CEO who vanished months ago after a scandal, was Eli. Her Eli. Amara dropped the coffee cup she was holding. It shattered across the floor, but she didn't move. Her heart pounded as she whispered his name again and again, trying to make sense of it. Why didn't he tell her? Why live like a homeless man? Why her? 2 days later, a black car stopped in front of her apartment building. Her neighbor stared as 2 men in suits stepped out, and handed her an envelope sealed with gold wax. Inside was a letter written in his familiar handwriting. Amara, you met me when I had nothing. Not my name, not my wealth, not my pride. The world around me had turned dark, and I wanted to disappear. You gave me light. You cared when I didn't deserve it. You reminded me that love doesn't see titles or money. Meet me tonight where it all began. Her heart raced as she reached the park under the falling snow. The old oak tree glowed with fairy lights. And there, waiting beneath it, stood Eli, or rather, Elijah Stone, in a long black coat, his gray eyes softer than she remembered. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The city noise faded away. You lied to me, she finally said, her voice trembling. I did, he admitted, because I want to know what it felt like to be loved. Not as a billionaire, but as a man who had lost everything. Her eyes welled with tears. And now, what do you want, Elijah? He stepped closer, his breath visible in the cold air. I want to earn the right to be the man you believed I could be. Before she could reply, he pulled out something from his pocket, a silver keychain, shaped like a heart, engraved with her initials. I kept this, he said softly. The first thing you gave me, your spare apartment key. It meant more to me than anything I ever owned. Amara felt her walls crumble. The snow fell heavier now, covering the park in white silence. She looked up at him. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, but the man who had once sat in the rain, broken and alone, until she reached out her hand. Come back, she whispered. He smiled that same gentle, haunting smile and said, Only if you'll have me. Their hands met in the cold. And for the first time, Amara realized that love doesn't always arrive in golden packages or luxury cars. Sometimes it comes wrapped in brokenness, disguised as a stranger beneath the rain. But just as she thought their story was beginning anew, the flash of cameras erupted from the trees, dozens of photographers, reporters shouting his name, microphones thrust toward them. Elijah froze. His bodyguards rushed in. Amara stared confused as chaos unfolded around her. And then, through the noise, she heard one reporter shout, Mr. Stone, is it true you're being investigated for fraud by your own company's board? Amara turned to him, her heart sinking. His expression changed, calm, unreadable, as he gently let go of her hand. Amara, he whispered, voice trembling. Whatever happens next, please, remember the man you met under the oak tree. Before she could answer, the men in suits pulled him away into the black car, and within seconds he was gone again, swallowed by the flashing lights and sirens echoing through the park. But deep inside, Amara knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could imagine. The cold wind whipped through the empty park as the taillights of Elijah's car disappeared into the darkness. Amara stood frozen. The echo of his last words tangled in her mind like a haunting melody. Her trembling fingers still felt the warmth of his hand, a reminder that what just happened wasn't a dream. The flash of cameras, the shouting reporters, the accusation, fraud. Her heart raced as she tried to make sense of it. She looked down at the snow, where faint footprints marked where he had stood moments ago. The fairy lights still glimmered softly above, mocking her with their quiet beauty. Everything felt surreal. Only hours ago, she believed she'd found something pure, something real. And now, it was as if her world had been turned upside down again. That night, Amara didn't sleep. Every word from the reporters echoed in her head. Fraud investigation, board members turning against him, missing assets worth millions. None of it sounded like the man she knew, the man who had eaten her leftovers with gratitude, who'd slept on her couch, who'd fixed her leaky faucet without asking for anything in return. But she couldn't shake off the doubt. What if it was true? What if she had fallen for a lie from the very beginning? At dawn, she walked to the hospital in a daze. Her co-workers noticed her silence, but didn't ask. She went through her routine mechanically, checking vitals, changing bandages, giving medication. But her thoughts kept drifting back to him, to the look in his eyes when he said, asterisk, please, remember the man you met under the oak tree. Asterisk, that evening, as she was leaving, a sleek black car pulled up outside the hospital gate. Her heart leapt. thinking it might be him. But when the window rolled down, it wasn't Elijah. It was a woman, elegant, poised, dressed in a sharp gray suit. "Miss Amara Khan?" the woman asked. "Yes." The woman stepped out, heels clicking against the pavement. "My name is Clara Wren. I'm Mr. Stone's legal advisor." Amara's breath caught. "Is he okay?" Clara hesitated before replying. "He's under investigation. The board wants to remove him as CEO. He refused to defend himself publicly." "Why?" Amara asked. "He could clear everything up, couldn't he?" Clara's expression softened. "Because he's protecting someone." Amara frowned. "Protecting who?" The woman's eyes studied her closely, as if deciding whether to trust her. Then she said quietly, "You." Amara's pulse quickened. "Me? Why me?" Clara didn't answer immediately. She opened her bag and handed Amara a folded envelope sealed with the same gold crest as before. "He wanted you to have this if things got worse. Read it when you're alone." And before Amara could ask anything more, Clara turned and disappeared back into the car, leaving her standing there with the letter clutched tightly in her hand. That night, Amara sat on her bed staring at the envelope for what felt like hours before she finally opened it. Inside was a handwritten note, the familiar, careful handwriting that made her heart ache. "Amara, if you're reading this, it means things didn't go as planned. I want to protect you from what's coming, but I fear I've dragged you into it anyway. There are people who would do anything to destroy me, people who don't care who gets hurt in the process. I can't explain everything now, but you need to know one thing. I didn't lie to you. When I met you, I truly had nothing. I had walked away from my company, from my name, from everything. The world saw a billionaire, but inside, I was empty. You brought me back to life. You gave me something real. No matter what you hear about me, no matter what they say, please believe that my love for you was the only truth I ever had." Eli. Tears blurred her vision as she clutched the letter to her chest. Every line felt like a whisper from him, raw and sincere. She didn't know what to believe anymore, but she knew one thing with certainty. She couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Over the next few days, the media exploded with coverage. "Billionaire CEO faces arrest over missing funds." One headline read, "Elijah Stone's secret disappearance linked to financial scandal," said another. The internet buzzed with speculation, some claiming he had faked his downfall, others calling him a genius gone rogue. Amara's chest ached as she watched strangers twist the story into entertainment. She wanted to scream that they didn't know him, that the man they painted as a criminal was the same man who had once given his last meal to a stray dog. But then, one detail in the news report caught her attention. Something small, almost insignificant. The footage of Elijah's arrest showed him being taken from his private office. Behind him, on the wall, was a painting, the oak tree in winter. Her breath caught. The same tree where they first met. That wasn't coincidence. It was a message. Without thinking, Amara decided to find out the truth herself. She took leave from the hospital and went straight to Stone Enterprises, a towering glass building in the city's financial district. The receptionist looked skeptical when she asked to see Elijah's lawyer, but when Amara showed a gold-sealed letter, everything changed. Within minutes, she was escorted to a private room on the 30th floor. Clara was already there, waiting. "I knew you'd come," Clara said quietly. "Tell me everything," Amara said, her voice steady. "Please." Clara took a deep breath. Elijah didn't steal anything. The money went missing because someone inside the company framed him, his own board. They wanted him out. He found out months ago, and instead of exposing him immediately, he disappeared to gather proof. Amara's eyes widened. So when he was on the streets, he wasn't hiding from justice, Clara interrupted softly. He was hiding from the people who wanted him dead. Amara felt the floor tilt beneath her. And now, Clara looked down. Now he's in custody, refusing to name names because he believes it would put others, including you, in danger. The board knows about you. Amara, they've been watching since the night you were photographed together. Amara's blood ran cold. They're watching me? Yes, Clara said. But he left something behind. A backup drive hidden somewhere only you would understand. He said you'd find it if you followed the place where everything began. The oak tree, Amara whispered. Clara nodded. He believed you'd understand. That night, Amara returned to the park. The snow had melted slightly, leaving the ground damp and muddy. The fairy lights were gone now, but the oak tree still stood strong against the winter sky. She circled around it, searching for any sign, any clue. Then her hand brushed against something solid, a small, rusted metal box half buried near the roots. Her heart pounded as she pulled it free and pried it open. Inside was a small flash drive wrapped in a piece of cloth, the same fabric on the old blanket she had once given him. She pressed the drive to her chest, tears burning in her eyes. He had trusted her with this, with everything. She didn't know what it contained, but she knew it was important. Maybe it was proof of his innocence. Maybe it was something darker, but it was the truth, and she was determined to find it. As she turned to leave, she noticed a figure standing in the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long black coat. Her breath hitched. "Elijah," she whispered, hope surging through her chest. But when the figure stepped forward, it wasn't him. It was someone else entirely. A man she'd never seen before, his face cold and expressionless. "You shouldn't have found that," he said quietly. Amara took a step back, clutching the drive tighter. "Who are you?" The man's eyes glinted in the dim light. "Someone who warned him not to involve you." Her pulse quickened. "You're one of them, aren't you?" He smiled faintly. "You really have no idea what you stepped into." Before she could move, another figure appeared behind him. "Clara," her voice sharp as a blade. "She knows enough," Clara said. "And she's not alone." The man's expression changed. His hand twitched toward his pocket, but Clara's glare stopped him cold. Amara's heart raced as Clara grabbed her arm and whispered urgently, "Run. Now!" And before Amara could ask why, the sound of distant sirens filled the night air, growing louder, closer, until the entire park erupted in flashing red and blue lights. Amara's breath came in short, sharp bursts as the sirens grew louder, their glow washing the park in crimson and blue. Clara's hand gripped hers tightly, pulling her through the shadows, away from the man in the black coat, who still stood near the oak tree. The air was icy, her lungs burned, but she didn't dare stop. Somewhere behind them, voices shouted, men's voices, cold and commanding. They sprinted through the winding paths until they reached a back gate, leading out onto a deserted street. Clara pressed her against the wall, both of them gasping for air. The city lights shimmered in the distance, indifferent to the chaos unfolding in the park. "Clara," Amara whispered, "what's happening? Who are those men?" Clara looked toward the flashing lights, then back at her, eyes fierce and determined. "Those men don't work for the police. They're part of the same network Elijah was trying to expose. They've been one step ahead of us from the beginning." Amara's heart pounded. "We have the drive, if we can get it to the right people." Clara nodded quickly. "That's exactly what we're going to do. But we need to be smart. If they catch us, that evidence disappears forever, and so do we." They flagged down a cab and ducked inside, the driver none the wiser. As the city blurred past, Amara clutched the small flash drive in her hand, as if it were life itself. She could still feel Elijah's presence in it, his faith, his trust, his love. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "To someone who still owes Elijah a favor," Clara replied. "Someone in the Justice Department. If we can get the data decrypted before the board intercepts it, we can clear his name." Amara stared out the window, her reflection pale against the city lights. She whispered softly to herself, "Hold on, Elijah. I'll find you. I promise." Hours later, they arrived at a dimly lit townhouse in an old part of the city. Clara knocked 3 times in a coded rhythm, and after a long pause, the door creaked open. A middle-aged man with graying hair and weary eyes appeared. "Clara Wren," he muttered. "It's been a long time." "Hello, Robert," Clara said. "We need your help. It's about Elijah Stone." The man's eyes flickered with something like guilt, or perhaps regret. "He saved my life once," he said quietly. "Come in." Inside, the air smelled of old books and coffee. Robert worked quickly, connecting the flash drive to his encrypted computer. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, and Amara's heart thudded as files began to open. Hundreds of documents, spreadsheets, and emails. "What is all this?" she asked. "Proof," Clara said. "Every transaction, every shell company, every forged signature, the board used to drain funds and pin it all on Elijah." Robert nodded grimly. "This is enough to destroy them." But before relief could settle in, an alert flashed on the computer screen. "Unauthorized access detected." "They found us," Robert hissed, slamming the keyboard. "They're trying to wipe the files remotely." Clara grabbed a drive from her bag. "Copy everything now." Robert's fingers flew across the keys as data streamed onto the backup device. Amara could feel her pulse in her throat. Outside, the distant hum of engines grew louder. Headlights cut across the window. "They're here," Clara whispered. In one swift motion, Robert handed the copied drive to Amara. "Take it and go. There's a back alley through the kitchen. Leads to the Riverwalk. Don't look back." "What about you?" Amara demanded. Clara shook her head. "We'll buy you time. You're the only one they don't expect." "No." Amara's voice cracked. "I can't leave you." Clara gripped her shoulders, her eyes fierce and resolute. "Elijah trusted you. Don't make that faith worthless." The next few moments blurred. The sound of the front door bursting open, shouts, footsteps pounding. Amara ran through the kitchen, into the cold night, her breath tearing through her chest. She sprinted down the alley, clutching the drive like a heartbeat, the river's glimmer ahead guiding her through the dark. Behind her, gunshots shattered the silence. She didn't stop, not when her lungs screamed, not when her legs burned. She ran until she reached the bridge, collapsing against the railing, tears streaming down her face. And then, through the fog, she saw him, Elijah, standing at the far end of the bridge, flanked by 2 police officers. His wrists were cuffed, his face pale, but when their eyes met, the world seemed to still. "Amara," he breathed as she stumbled toward him, the drive still clutched in her hand. One of the officers stepped forward, blocking her. "Miss, you can't." "It's her," Elijah interrupted. "She has it. The proof." Amara thrust the flash drive toward them. This clears him. Please, you have to see it." The officer hesitated, then took the drive. "If this is evidence, it'll go straight to the federal team. But you need to come with us, both of you." As they led Elijah toward the car, Amara walked beside him, her hand brushing his. For the first time in weeks, she saw the faintest hint of a smile on his face. "You found it," he whispered. "I promised I would," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. He turned his head slightly, just enough so only she could hear. "No matter what happens, remember what I said. Love doesn't need luxury. It just needs truth." Hours turned into days as the investigation unraveled. The drive contained enough evidence to expose the entire conspiracy. Offshore accounts, illegal transfers, signed confessions hidden in encrypted files. The board members who had plotted against Elijah were arrested one by one. The media that once called him a fraud now hailed him as a genius who risked everything to reveal corporate corruption. Amara watched it all unfold from her apartment window, disbelief still clinging to her heart. The man she had once found shivering under a tree was now a symbol of courage and redemption. Yet the victory didn't feel complete. He was still in custody, awaiting formal clearance. Every night, she returned to park. The oak tree had shed most of its leaves, standing tall and bare beneath the pale moonlight. She would sit beneath it and whisper his name, remembering every smile, every word, every moment they had shared. One evening, as she sat lost in thought, a soft voice broke the silence behind her. "I was hoping I'd find you here." Her heart froze. Slowly, she turned, and there he was. No cuffs, no guards. Just Elijah, standing under the same branches where their story began. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. Then she rose to her feet, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You're free." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. All charges dropped. The truth came out faster than anyone expected. "You did that, Amara." She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. We did that. He stepped closer, brushing the tears from her face. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. When the world saw a criminal, you saw a man worth saving. I don't think I'll ever deserve that. She smiled through the tears. You already did, the moment you chose truth over power. They stood in silence for a moment, the city humming softly in the distance. Snow began to fall again, delicate flakes catching in her hair. He reached out, his hand warm against her cheek. I bought this park, he said suddenly, almost shyly. Her eyes widened. You what? He laughed quietly. I wanted to protect it. The oak tree, the place where we met. It means more to me than any building I've ever owned. I wanted to make sure no one could ever destroy it. Amar's heart swelled. Why tell me that now? Because, he said softly, it's not just a park anymore. It's where my life began again. And I wanted you to know I don't want to rebuild that life without you. For the first time in a long while, Amar let herself smile. Fully, freely, without fear. She took his hand, and for a moment, it felt as if the entire city exhaled around them. The snow fell heavier, the lights glowed warmer, and the world seemed to pause just for them. But as they stood there beneath the oak tree, a car idled quietly across the street. A figure inside lowered a tinted window, speaking into a phone. Target located. Proceeding as planned. The car slipped away into darkness, unseen by either of them. Elijah pulled Amara closer, his voice barely a whisper. It's over now. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was still watching, that the storm they had survived was only a fraction of what was yet to come. And as the snow continued to fall, blanketing the park in silence, the wind carried a single whisper through the trees, a warning, almost like a promise, that their love, born in the shadows, was about to be tested once again.